Welcome to the channel, my name is Grizzy, and today we're ranking each weapon in Apex Season 14 from worst to best. There's tons of weapons here, so we're going to jump right into it and be quick and concise. First up, we have the D tier weapons, and the worst weapon in the game is the P2020. Yes, the P2020 can be somewhat decent with hammer point rounds, but honestly, they even work better on the other weapons that those hammer point rounds attach to. The P2020 is a weapon that you need to look to immediately swap as soon as you can find another option. The last weapon making up the D tier category is the RE45, which is in the crafter this season, and wasting crafting materials to make this weapon is a major reason why this weapon is rated low, because it would probably just be better to run other SMGs and craft heals to help you in the long run. The hammer point rounds can help, but the RE is never to be utilized as a primary and is a D tier weapon this season. Now let's move on to the C tier weapons, and the first weapon making up C tier is the Devotion. Staying on cue with our previous point, you would probably be better off crafting heals and pick up a more reliable energy weapon like the Volt or the Havoc. The Devo just takes way too long to begin to fire at a good speed unless you have the turbocharger, which is pretty difficult to find. Now moving on in C tier, we have another energy weapon with the triple take, and the triple take to me seems like it's kind of lost its identity because it hits for low damage numbers, and to increase its damage you have to wait for that choke to charge up, meaning its DPS is really slow and weak. There's other marksman rifles down the line which are way better, so the triple take here is just C tier. We have two energy weapons in a row, might as well make it three. I have the L-Star here in C tier as well, even though this weapon did improve from last season, mainly due to it being an LMG with a slow strafe speed and handling. To me, the Volt and the Havoc just outclass the L-Star as well because they offer way more accuracy and speed and efficiency. Now last season, I think I had the Mozambique in B tier, but I just can't rank it higher than C tier this season. It didn't really have a lot of changes, and it can be effective with the purple bolt and hammer point rounds, but I would just rather have a PK hit for big damage numbers or the other meta shotgun that we'll get to here in a bit. Moving on with C tier, we have the Alternator, which is a very consistent and easy to control weapon. Its fire rate is just very slow compared to other SMGs and lacks the DPS, so I can't rate it higher than C tier this season. Following the Alternator, still in C tier, we have the Prowler. I know some people really love the Prowler as their SMG of choice, but its DPS is low at 167 per an SMG, and burst weapons in Apex seem to be more ineffective to me than the automatic weapons. Finally, our last weapon in C tier is the Hemlock, and this is probably mainly personal preference because the Hemlock can have a solid DPS. It's just more difficult to use and to land all those critical burst shots on your enemies. So for me, I just prefer the Flatline since its close range and hipfire accuracy can be super consistent, so that's just my personal preference. Moving on into our B tier weapons, our first weapon up is actually three weapons in one, and that is the Longbow, Sentinel, and Charge Rifle. I feel like each sniper added to the Apex games brings something unique to the table, like the hit scan effectiveness of the Charge Rifle, the fire rate of the Longbow or the Skull Piercer, or the ability to hit for huge damage with the slow firing Sentinel. They're all solid and all deserve to be in B tier. After the snipers, we have the weapon that a lot of people thought would define the meta this season, and that's the 30-30 repeater. This weapon now takes the Skull Piercer hop up, but it can be difficult to find and you have to wait to charge up each shot. My personal opinion makes me think that the G7 is the superior DMR because you can spam fire it unlike the 30-30. Our next weapon might surprise some people because it actually is a weapon from the care package, and that's the Rampage. Yes, the Rampage can be a highly effective weapon with the charged thermite. However, without a thermite, the weapon has an extremely slow fire rate and doesn't feel like a crazy powerful crate weapon. Another weapon where I might catch some flack on from the OG Apex gamers is the R99. It is a B tier weapon. With the addition of laser sights, they actually nerfed SMGs as a whole because you only get an increase in hipfire control if you have a purple laser sight. The weapons do not take barrel stabilizers in anymore, and although the R9 fires incredibly fast, the Car SMG hits harder and the Volt hits for more accuracy. Next up in the B tier, we have the Havoc, and this weapon has poor hip-fire accuracy, and you have that reliance on finding a turbocharger to reach that max potential. Yes, the Havoc hits extremely hard and is very solid at close to close and medium range, but this thing at more ranges is just not as efficient as some of the other assault rifles, which is why I have the Havoc in B tier. Lastly, in B tier, we have the Spitfire, which I still can't get used to as a light weapon. They did change the recoil pattern this season, and it can still be solid with its high magazine count, but at the end of the day, its major benefit to the weapon is just being able to spray and pray, and you can still miss shots and still deal some damage. Now moving into A tier, we have the Volt SMG, which is the most consistent SMG for range damage, and is super easy to control with its minimal recoil. I'm super happy the Volt is back because I really love using the Volt, and has a solid DPS as well at 180. The EVA 8 was buffed into relevance with Apex Season 14, where it had its fire rate increased from 2.3 to 2.0, the pellet damage increased from 6 to 7, and then that bolt rate of fire, they had more bonuses increased as well. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, the PK, now this thing fires slower, but it hits extremely hard and is one of the best weapons for taking on multiple enemies at one time. The PK is a beast and is an A tier weapon in Season 14. Next up, the G7 Scout is back to the ground loot for the first time, and man, this is honestly such a great weapon to rock in the ranked playlist. The G7 is extremely consistent and reliable at a safe range. I think that the G7 is the best marksman weapon in the entire game that is a ground loot weapon in Apex Season 14. Then lastly, we have everyone's two favorite assault rifles. The Flatline and the R301 are the two last A tier weapons, where the R301 excels at easy to control recoil, and the Flatline fires slower but hits harder and has some really excellent hip fire. Lastly, we have our S tier weapons, the absolute best guns in the game, and the first S tier weapon with this season is the Car SMG. The Car has a massive 202 DPS, a fast fire rate, and can utilize both heavy and light weapon attachments. The fact that you can usually get this thing suited up because it takes multiple ammos and attachments mean it's always ready to beam some enemies. The Car is hands down the best SMG in Apex and is an S tier weapon. Our last floor loot weapon for the tier list is the Wingman, and my lord did the devs screw up with this one. They added the Skull Piercer attachment back to the floor loot but totally forgot to nerf the Wingman headshot damage, meaning if you can get a Skull Piercer on the Wingman, you can literally take down enemies with 2 100 damage plus shots right to the head. If you can hit your shots, the Wingman is hands down the best weapon in the game, and the Skull Piercer makes this thing the most tilting gun to die to in the game because you can literally die in an instant if you do get shot in the head. So then our last three weapons are simply the last three care package weapons, the Bocek Bow, the Kraber, and the Mastiff, all with incredible uses just for different reasons. Obviously, the Kraber can do insane amounts of damage in one shot, which can change the game. The Mastiff is the deadliest close range weapon in the entire game and fires very quickly, and the Bocek Bow can be extremely precise and deal big damage at medium ranges, and those weapons all deserve to be in the S tier for Season 14. So guys, those are my opinions on the weapons in Apex Season 14, but I want to hear your opinion, so comment down below how would you change this list. If you guys are interested in checking out the legend rankings, then be sure to check out this video and I'll catch you all in my next upload. I'm Grizzy and I'm out. Peace.